A Treatise of Satan's Temptations. By Richard Gilpin. A Discourse of the Malice, Power, Cruelty and Diligence of Satan. Second part of Chapter 11. That lust darkens the mind. Evidences thereof. The 5 ways by which it doth blind men. First, by preventing the exercise of reason. The ways of that prevention: 1. Secrecy and tempting, Satan's subtlety therein. 2. Surprisal. 3. Gradual entanglements. First, our lusts blind us by preventing and intercepting the exercise of light and reason, and Satan in this case useth these deceits. 1. First, he endeavors so to stir up our lust as yet to conceal his design. Secrecy is one of his main engines. He doth not in this case show his weapon before he strikes, and indeed his policy herein is great. 1. By this means he takes us at unawares, secure, and unprepared for resistance. 2. We are often ensnared without noise, and before our consideration of things can come in to rescue us. 3. If he get not his whole design upon us this way, yet he oft makes a half victory. By this means he procures a half content or inclination to sin, before we discover that we are under a temptation. For when the foundation of a temptation is laid unespied, then we awaken with the sin in our hand, as sleeping men awake sometime with the word in their mouths. If any question, how can these things be? How can he steal a temptation upon us with such secrecy? I answer, he can do it these 3 ways. 1. First, he sometimes after a careless manner, and as it were by the by, drops in a suggestion into our hearts, and that without noise or importunity, giving it, as it were this charge: stir not up, nor awaken him, and then, he sits by to observe the issue, and to see if the tinder will take fire of itself. Thus many emotion thrown into our hearts, as it were accidentally, ere ever we are aware, begets a sudden flame. 2. Secondly, he sometimes fetcheth a compass, and makes a thing far different to be a preamble, or introduction to his intended design. Thus by objects, employments, discourse, or company, that show not any direct tendency to evil, doth he insensibly occasion pride, passion, or lust. How slyly and secretly doth he put us upon what he intends, as a further snare! How unawares! While we think of no such thing, are we carried sometime upon the borders of sin, and into the enemy's quarters. Satan in this, acts like a fowler, who useth a stalking horse, as if he were upon some other employment, when yet his design is the destruction of the bird. 3. Thirdly, another way of secrecy, is his raising a crowd of other thoughts in the mind, and while these are mixed, and confusedly floating in the understanding or fancy, then doth he thrust in, among them the intended suggestion. And then suffering the rest to vanish, he by little and little singles this out, as a more special object of consideration, so that we cast a sudden glance upon this, and we are often taken with it, before we consider the danger. In this, Satan doth as soldiers who take the advantage of a mist, to make a nearer approach to their enemies, and to surprise them before discovery of the danger. This he doth with us, while we are in a musing fit or a melancholy dream. 2. A second deceit, for the preventing of a serious consideration, is sudden surprisal. In the former, he endeavored to conceal the temptation while he is at work with us, but in this he shows the temptation plainly, only he sets upon us, without giving of us warning of the onset. But then he backs it, with all the violent importunity he can, and by this, he hinders the recollecting of ourselves, and the aid of reason. This course, Satan only takes, with those whose passions are apt to be very stirring, and boisterous, or such as, being his slaves and vessels, are more subject to his commands. Thus, a sudden provocation to an angry man, gives him not time to consider, but carries him headlong. A surprise of occasion and opportunity, is frequently a conquest, to those that have any earnestness of hope, desire, or revenge. Surely, David was taken at this advantage, in the matter of Bathsheba. And here, we may note the good men, upon such a sudden motion do yield, without any blow or struggling, to that which at other times, they could not be drawn to, by many reasons. 3. Thirdly, consideration is prevented by gradual entanglements. Satan so orders the matter, that sin creeps on upon us as sleep, by insensible degrees. For this end sometimes he dissembles his strength, and sets upon us with lower temptations, and with less force than otherwise he could. He knows we are not moved to extremes, but by steps and habits, are not confirmed, but by gradual proceedings. To take too great strides, may sometime prevail at present. But the suddenness and greatness of the alteration, begetting a strangeness on the soul, may occasion afterthoughts and recoiling. Therefore he tempts first to thoughts, then to a delight in these thoughts, then to the continuation of them, then to resolve, and so on to practice. And in like manner, he tempts some, to make bold with a small matter, which shall scarce come under the notion of wrong. Then to a greater, and so gradually to higher things, and thus he insensibly brings on a thievish inclination and practice. For the same end sometimes, he shows his skill in the management of occasions. He imperceptibly hooks men into sin, by drawing them first to be bold with occasions. He tells them they may sit at the alehouse, and yet not be drunk. That they may keep familiarity, and yet not be lewd. That they may look upon a commodity, and yet not steal. And when the occasions are by this means made familiar to them, then he puts them on a step further. But by such slow motions, that the progress is scarce discerned till they be in a snare. Thanks.